we're going to go ahead and jump into the adventure. We're going to introduce your characters and their description, what they're like and what they do very shortly. But for your fellow players, can you introduce yourselves, please? And we can start with Daryl. Just name, pronouns if you want to give them. If not, they can assume anything that you think is fun and interesting about you that someone might want to know.
Oh, okay. My name's Daryl. He, him. Pronouns. Not too much interesting about me. I'm a godless lawyer in the chat and on Twitch streams that I visit. I love to go to people's Twitch chats and throw a lot of really inane puns at them. See how that hits them. Usually my MO, and I am on Twitter, but tweet about a bunch of eclectic things, and really nobody should follow me. So,
one interesting thing, actual lawyer. So that's always interesting. When you were like, I am actually a lawyer, I'm like, cool. I thought it was just a name.
No, not just a name. Actually a lawyer. Also actually an atheist. Less people ask about that, but it's true.
Less people ask about it because they're afraid of the opposite end of the spectrum most of the time, in my experience.
Yes. Though I did go to Catholic school, so there's that. But, that's me.
That's where the seed was.
Matthew.
All right. Hi, I'm Matt. On Twitter, you can find me at KintaroTPC, as well as at Curse of Lords, which is it used to be a D&D 5e actual play podcast. We're currently moving to a new system because of the Mike Merle's situation. We recently tried Quest, which was actually quite fun. The part 1 of that one shot just released. You can find that on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc., etc. We're going to probably move on to Shadow of the Demon Lord, which is really interesting. It's got some real edgelord stuff in it, but system-wise, it seems pretty neat. And I think in September-ish, October-ish, depending on what the scheduling ends up being. If things go smoothly, I'll be on a stream with the Venture Maidens. So that'll be very interesting. They're doing a Empire of Ghouls thing by Cobalt Press, who rule pretty hard. Pronouns he, him. I work in tech. It's probably about the most interesting things that I have to say.
I already shared everyone's character names, their class, and their name in the general or the Patreon chat. Go over to Ryan.
I am Ryan, otherwise known as Mythosia.
I never knew how to pronounce that. I'm glad I know now.
Yeah. A lot of people get tripped up on it. Yeah, it's Mythosia, said like ambrosia. I am on Twitter at Mythosia985. I mostly just retweet stuff. D&D stuff, cute pictures.
Things to improve your day incrementally. That's all
much.
Anyone really has anymore.
Yeah. He, him. Trying to think of anything interesting. I have a bunch of dice.
That's good.
We can compare dice hauls someday. Martin.
Right, good dice. Not less.
Well, my name is Martin. I am originally from Germany. As you already probably noticed, I remember the first time I joined a D&D game on Discord with voice. People told me, "Oh, we're not doing accents yet." Well, I'm sorry, but I can't try without.
I wish I was trying.
My pronouns are he, him, and D&D is my breakout space because I am a molecular biologist, so usually science is my thing, and I refuse to spend my evenings with science as well. Well, to be honest, I don't manage all too well. You never can turn that little voice in your head off. At least I can't. I cannot watch TV without thinking at least 50 times. That's not how it works.
Fair.
You would think, I have to say, you would think in the year 2020 and 2021, they would have people on staff that were trained to check for those kind of inconsistencies. Because movie magic, like it happens because it's a movie, is wearing very thin on a lot of people.
Oh no.
They still got to dumb it down for folks like me, though, because I don't get the science. I feel the same way when I watch like Law and Order. So that's a
Hold up.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but sometimes it's just face palming.
Fair.
Well, that's my Twitter handle is Wayward Sage, and if I'm on Twitch, I'm also Wayward Sage, and I think on Discord, I'm also most of the time.
Wonderful.
And yeah, that's basically me.
We have a very pasty male cast tonight, but I'm very, very happy to have all of you here and running a game.
Bearded
Classico.
white dudes.
Yeah, classic white dudes.
Yeah.
Also,
I'm-
go ahead, Martin.
I'm gay, so this counts for diversity.
I'm bi, so a little bit
Yeah.
more. Just a little pepper on top there.
Aromantic, as rare as that one is. I don't know. I
Canadian.
always see relationships like, I don't know, roommates.
Yeah.
Like, as long as you pay rent, cool, we can date. But getting into things. Wash it away.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, it's perfect. It's perfect. Never, ever be sorry. The four of you have been set on a quest to locate a certain individual. Now, the four of you may have met on the long road. You may have only met in the past couple of days. It's really completely up to you. But you all find yourselves in the town of Gold Falls. Gold Falls is a very small, quaint logging community. It is so far away from the nearest mega hub that it may take you a month to go all the way to one of those bigger cities, somewhere where you might even find a teleportation circle to cross the globe. It's so far removed. But what has brought you here is, as you were searching for this missing person, this spy most of you know is his trade. You may even be friends, lovers, acquaintances with this individual. Their name is Udom. They are a gnome, of some renown as being a thorough, fierce friend and something of a mischievous sort. They get themselves caught up in all sorts of altercations around the world, but they're the type of person who will send you letters just to say that they're thinking about you, send you little trinkets from their travels around the globe. One of you may have received a scale given freely from a mermaid. Another could have had a harpy's feather. Another a piece of dragon's tooth. It's always some strange little trinket just to show that Udom is thinking of you. Whether that be in a professional sense or a personal one, that is completely up to you and your character. The four of you have made your way to Gold Falls. It was dark, raining, and it had been a long, muddy, irritating trek by the time you got here. When you arrived in this town, there was only one place, one shop, that catered to the sort of things that adventurers of your sort would require. Rations, a place to sleep, repair for your equipment, tending for your animals, if you have any. And that is called Harbron's Stable and Tannery. It also acts as the inn of this place. And Harbron himself was behind the small counter, covered in leatherwork, with things hanging on the wall, including digging implements and gardening tools. Small tables were littered around, but it was completely empty, save for a single candle that you saw flickering through the window when you came in the night before. The 4 of you bartered for a room. It was 1 gold coin for the 4 of you, but you had to split a room, so... Was it worth the price? Yes. You were finally out of the rain, you were finally warm, and you finally had something to eat. However, during the night, before you even awake, is when our story begins. The 4 of you find yourselves in a graveyard. A graveyard of 1,000-foot-tall stone towers that stretch in every direction. It's foggy here, dense and inky. It's hard to even make out your own hands. But when you stare off into the distance, it's as though your vision cuts through this murk in an unnatural way. Lightning splinters like a spider's web across the sky, far, far off. You don't see any stars overhead, but you feel exposed, like you're out on a branch and it's about to snap. The 4 of you can see one another, and you see that you're wearing similar things that you wore on the road here when you met each other just outside of town. But it's strange that you would see one another. When you look down at your feet, it's wet. Stone, but there's some kind of slime covering it. It sticks uncomfortably when you move your feet. And there's a wind howling here that picks up ever so gently as you look around. And it keeps rising and rising, louder and louder and louder, to the point you can barely hear. The lightning cracks between 2 of these towers. You realize the lightning is coming from them, splintering to other towers, thinner, smaller, that you can't see, only illuminated by the lightning itself. Stepping from behind a stone tower, maybe 100 feet from you, barely visible in this inky, smoky darkness, you see a person. What should be a person. Their shape is correct. The dimensions are right. Everything about them seems wrong, though. Their shape is so dark that it cuts through the inky darkness. There is no light, none at all, in this silhouette that steps out from behind the tower. It twists its head strangely at an odd, unsurvivable angle at the 4 of you, and you realize it's tall. It's very, very tall, maybe 9 or 10 feet, even at this distance. As you're watching it, and all of you are drawn to this thing, the wind, though it's still cutting through your clothes, cutting through your hair, damp and cold, it goes completely silent, and you just hear the squelching of this thing's footsteps. It is so much closer, in less than the blink of an eye, as though it appears within 10 feet of you. Their movements are so wrong, alien, it's hard for you to even describe it. Some of you feel the urge to reach up and touch your eyes to make sure they're seeing what actually exists. When it looks at you, you feel it looking. The strange moment when a passerby glances your direction and you glance at them as well. You feel that pull, that connection. But there are no eyes. There is just blackness in this thing. There is only one word that crawls its way into each of your minds when you look at this person, this figure, emptiness. And you wake up. The four of you take a gasp as though you were falling, catching yourself on your various cots, beds, whatever it is you choose to sleep on. The disturbance in the room is so loud it sounds like someone's breaking in, but when you look around, it's your three fellows that are moving. Most of you are damp with sweat, if you are capable of such a thing. All of you look unnerved, despite yourselves, despite what you've done and seen, what you've accomplished, what you're prepared for. And you're left in this room of silence, save for the sound of birds outside the window, chirping and fighting on a branch on a nearby tree. The light shines through the window and illuminates Daryl. Can you please tell us about your character, describe them, and what they're doing in this moment?
Well, Laurent is a extremely gaunt man who looks very out of place in a tannery in a logging town. He's very very thin, slightly tall, stretched out almost, with a very fine black mustache and meticulously combed black hair. While he's not attractive in the conventional sense, he is quite well put together and fastidiously clean and neat. His armor is functional, but also for presentation, made of calf skin. He wears a paisley ascot tucked into his armor that gives him something of a haughty appearance. His nose is just a little too long and a little too turned up for most people's taste. But while he's not a classic adventurer, he is intelligent and snobby, but cognizant of what others might think. He'd be more at home in court, and in fact he was a court functionary until rumors surfaced that he had in fact forged some of his credentials, and he's searching Udon because they struck up a correspondence some time ago, and Laurent is convinced that information that Udon may be able to provide will help him get back into the good graces of court and maybe even earn a fortune and a noble title, because he has fallen in love with one of the nobleman's daughters and seeks to live up to their high standards. And in this moment, he's sort of shooting out of bed, bringing his hand to his chest, obviously shaken by the strange dream, the wind and lightning that, for someone as slight as him, would almost threaten to knock him off his feet. Seeing that it's dissipated into birds chirping, he straightens up somewhat and looks a little embarrassed, looking around the room to see if his companions might, even if in fact have experienced the same thing as him.
When you look around the room, you see this very large, but spindly, not heavy, lizard folk who's nearby. Martin, can you please describe Lulu for everyone? You're muted, Martin.
You're muted.
Common. Do that all the time. Lolu is a lizard folk. He's very, very thin. He's has a narrow head, small snout. He has two little horns that go backwards. One of it is partially broken off. He has dark blue scales that go to the back of his head and all around right down along his back, but his belly is more palish gray. and there's some yellow shimmer to all of his scales, basically. He has yellow cat eyes, and he is dressed like you would expect the usual adventurer to dress. He's wearing leather, not terribly thick, just for comfort rather than for protection. Pants and sleeveless little shirt that is hanging down to roughly the mid of his thigh. He also has a blue kind of scarf wrapped around himself. That is the only fancier thing that he's wearing. Not really fancy, but fancier. All in all, it looks a little bit more like someone who's not used to adventuring life imagines that adventurer looks like than actual person that is out in the field. And at the moment, he's not sweat covered. He doesn't really sweat. And at first glance, he might not look shaken, but he's moving very abruptly and looking around. It's for someone who gets easily annoyed, it might be annoying. Other than that, there's not much to say about him. He's quiet. He's at the same time terribly curious, up to the point of being nosy. And he doesn't read the social cues all so well to know when he should be stopping to ask questions. So that can be getting old soon. I'll try not to do that to you, but in general, that is a problem that he has faced before. He mostly gets by working as some kind of hedge wizard, providing services to common folks, like little herbs, tiny spells, or runes that are supposed to be helping. If how magical they really are is open to discussion, but he's 100% convinced that it helps. And if somebody else is convinced enough, they might get some kind of placebo effect out of it too. And that is basically Lulu. He's usually friendly and helpful, and I think he's missing Udom.
Actually, Lulu, you particularly, since I know where your character was before this, you received a letter that you currently have pinched between two of your claw-like fingers. Even though you shouldn't. You must have fished it out of your pack, out of a book, even. And it's crumpled up there, held tightly. The letter that you received when you were still working at Survey Site 801, it was from Udom, in his hand, with his stamp. And when you opened it, expecting a letter from your friend, it said, over and over and over, written in more and more frantic script, "The empty man comes." And then it was folded up, delicately stamped with a wax seal, put inside of an oilcloth and sent to you like a careful package. And that is what probably upset you enough to come looking for it.
Undoubtedly. Was it in his handwriting?
It was. There's no doubt. You probably have 20 such letters.
Okay. And it tasted like him too.
It does. You can smell with your tongue and senses that this letter has a heat to it, like a frantic sweetness almost. But it does taste of Udom, that same kind of oiled perfume that he always adorns everywhere, hoping to impress.
I'd probably hate, but...
At least it's easy to identify. But somehow, in the night during this terror, you have fished this letter from your pack and have it cracked open and crumpled between two fingers, as though on a reflex. Looking in your clenched claws you see Matthew. Can you describe your character for us?
Yeah. So for outside observers, it would be incredibly difficult to say exactly what Cruz looks like in this moment. Fortunately for you other three, you've been with him long enough to see him when he's not in motion as he is right now. Cruz is a roughly 5'10-ish, almost human-looking humanoid, if it weren't for the fact that his skin is kind of this ashy gray, and his hair is this filament that almost seems like a wig of grass that was set on fire, and it's still got sort of like those embers, the glow there. He is a fire genasi. His eyes are like a dark brown that doesn't seem to have anything unique about them. It's like they're brown, but it's hard to say if they're glowing or not. What he's wearing is a well-made suit of chainmail. It's definitely designed to be a suit of armor that is to be used with relatively little adornment to it. It is just incredibly well made, so it was built to last like a good boot. The major source of adornment on him is, well, there are two. One of which is a crest shield, which bears his family crest, which also appears on the cape that he wears. The family crest in this case is a coin purse being poured into a forge to be melted down. At this precise moment, Cruz is doing about exactly what you've come to expect from this person. Cruz most likely woke up screaming because of this dream and is using his shield to help wedge himself under the nearest bed while screaming, "No, no, 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 no." You've come to know Cruz to be a incredible coward, despite his massive stature and weird ability to actually fight when he's really pushed. So the very last thing that you see is the cape just kind of disappear under the bed, probably waking up someone else in the process.
Cruz, part of this journey that's been the most difficult for you is that you've had these nightmares for a while, actually. These small vestiges of cyclopean monoliths in darkness, wreathed in lightning, but they've always been short flashes. They've always woken you up immediately. Never have you lingered so long in one. Whether you share that with your companions on the road or not is no big deal. But part of what turned you here to Gold Falls is that you remember hearing that name in one of these nightmares from Udam. You've met them on occasion, but the idea, this peculiar, unstoppable idea that something is going on here, it's pulled you like a piece of thread, dragged you here despite your urge not to ever see what is in those nightmares. But, true to form, you wedge your shield beneath this low bed and crawl beneath, reach back out and clutch your cape underneath with you. In the bed. Right above your head, you see that the bed has seeped down from the person inside of it. Ryan, can you describe your character?
So, Asanath is a drow, very much unaccustomed to being up here. Normally she wears rather fine, if worn, especially from the travel clothing. She doesn't really carry a whole lot. More just kind of things that are useful, but not necessarily the most useful. Kind of flashy. You would all know that she is a spellcaster of some sort. But, as this is all happening, She jolts awake, looks over into the sun, and begins presumably swearing in Undercommon. As the combination of the dream and the sun has started off her day very poorly.
Laurent actually speaks Undercommon.
She is cursing this empty creature and Halor's son. In very unkind terms.
The four of you have this realization, probably in the Undercommon curses, that you all saw something similar in your dreams. You smell bacon and maybe potatoes, some kind of roasting meat downstairs that probably churns your stomach, as the cold night didn't bade you to eat very well. But you are left to your devices in this fairly sizable room, though it seems as though usually 6 would stay here. Luckily, you have the 2 extra little sleeping spots that you have packed all of your various equipment in.
So Laurent kind of stares at his companion who has gone under the bed, and then pushes his hand a little further into his chest when he hears the cursing in Undercommon and says, I am thinking that we all had the same nightmare, Especially Monsieur de la Cruz. He seems to have had it worse than the rest of us.
It's always the worst for me.
Oh, it's your whining. Damn.
This is so strange. Very strange.
Lolo, you are practiced in the ways of the arcane. Is it, I have never experienced this. Is it usual for people to who travel together to have similar experiences when they sleep?
I don't. I also am not usually willing to share what I'm dreaming about, but that was strange even for me. I believe we might also not have been the only ones who have had these strange dreams. Look, Odom left me this or sent me this. And Lulu takes out the letter, tries to straighten it out as good as he still can, and just points at the words. That sounds like the empty man has already come. And I would not mind if he leaves again now. Have you heard or seen anything similar? Have you experienced such things before?
I have not, but empty man, this is an apt description of what I saw in my dream.
If you can even call it a man. Looked like one, I guess.
Well, empty mostly, but... Are you alright under there?
No.
I think it's safe to come up now.
What makes you say that?
I smell bacon.
Could you get me some?
Uh,
Just slide it under the bed.
Fine. Lolo gets up and goes hunting for bacon, but returns immediately if he can get his hands on some.
So, Lulu, you go down the stairs. In the dark of night, this place seemed a lot more inviting and well-made. This is little more than a sawmill turned into a shop. You see that there are long strips of different types of leather hanging on the walls, traps and skins drying. But the food does smell quite enticing as you come down the stairs. When you look through the front door, which is little more than a curtain that you pulled back the night before, you can see out into the mostly sunny morning and see a large congregation of people around what seems to be a pedestal and a town crier, maybe, standing atop it, but it's a bow shot from you. Behind the bar, you see the same thick-necked, heavy-handed bartender from the night before. You know them to be Harbrin. They said Harbrin when you came inside, and little more other than the price of admission to one of the rooms. But now, when you're looking at this person, you see that they are covered from head to the tips of their fingers in writing. Blue writing. "Morning," says Harbin.
Oh, good morning.
His
I
thick,
came-
bushy, red beard is crisscrossed, it seems, with these blue, when you approach, tattoos. They're not wet like ink. They're driven into his skin.
Lulu steps right up to the bar and leans forward. I came down here for something, and at the same time, his eyes move, trying to read, like he's actually looking at a book, and he's not really subtle about it either. This is fascinating. Who wrote on you? And why?
Harbin, unblinking, looks back at you as you read and says, "Hungry? I have made breakfast." And then when you ask who has wrote on him, "Jish, as with all." He pulls out a tin plate and puts it down on the counter right in front of him, scrapes off a skewered potato and kind of chops it.
Can we have some breakfast? We need bacon upstairs.
He slides off a couple pieces of bacon on top of the potatoes and tears a heel of bread and puts it on there as well and hands it to you. "Taking some to your friends, too?"
Yes, please. So, do you still have some of that bacon that wasn't fried?
He robotically repeats 3 dishes, potato, 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 and as he's sliding the bacon off and you ask, he nods. "Raw?"
Oh, yes, please.
He pulls out this heel of bacon, scrapes the salt off, cuts a big slab and puts it on the plate next to a potato. And then he looks at the potato and he looks at you. "Potato?"
Oh, I'll eat the potato.
He nods. And he folds the 3 plates together so that they're manageable for you to carry and kind of stacks them up and hands you all 4 of the plates.
Excellent. As he does that, I just keep reading. Is anything recognizable of this? Is this...
Make me an Arcana check, please.
Oh. Let's have a look at this. It's 13.
A 13, you are fairly certain that these are not letters. They seem to be arcane runes, maybe, or some kind of ciphered script. It's not a written language that you've ever seen or imagined you would see. It's not some derivative of Jotun or Dwarven or anything.
Okay. I'll grab the plates and move back, but as I'm moving, I'll keep looking over my shoulder, trying to remember everything that I can see as well as I possibly can, and then try not to stumble on the stairs.
You start heading up the stairs and you look back over your shoulder and you see the crowd outside is, swaying and this town crier is still speaking. But what catches your attention mostly is this other smell that permeates down here beyond the bacon. And it's the smell of burnt skin. And you see Harbron grab this iron skillet that he was taking the bacon from with his bare hand and move it back over to the stovetop. And once it's back over there, the grease still bubbling away, he turns back around, faces out into this shop, and stands like a flesh statue almost. A fly lands on his face and crawls up to his eyelid. He doesn't blink or swat it away. Enjoy breakfast. When he sees that you're still on the stairs. If you need more, just holler. I'll be down here.
I will let you know. And with that, I'm making my way up the stairs. First putting the one plate in front of the bed. Bacon turned closest to it. I brought breakfast. This is quite the unusual place. I have not stayed at a place like this before. Please have your plates, and he keeps the one with the raw bacon. But after this unusual experience, he sticks with the potato for now.
I will say, you can obviously tell that it is actually bacon. It's actually pork bacon. You're very familiar with what human flesh and other types of animal flesh look like. It seems to be actual pig bacon.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be terribly upset if it wasn't, but
Yeah.
I've
know.
learned that it is frowned upon, and it's not like I have a taste for it, so... yeah, but still, I'm starting with the potato for now.
Mm-hmm.
So the plate disappears under the bed. You hear like the slurp of a bacon strip just go in, and then like as you hear munching of potato, you see Cruz just kind of very slowly crawl out from under the bed and like holding the plate and like getting up, and he's just like eating it quietly, and looks out the window and eats more.
There seems to be quite the congregation outside. They are swaying, and there is someone talking to them.
Cruz,
they're
you
not asking
actually
for me, are they?
Cruz, you actually see this when Lulu says it and you're looking out the window. You see that there's probably 25 people. You can't imagine there being a whole lot more than that in this town, kind of congregated out around from this vantage point what looks like a well that has been covered over with planks. And standing atop those planks is a cloaked individual who is speaking to them in not a loud town crier voice, but more personable, as they each individually reach up and take his hands.
So yeah, Cruz is gonna be like keeping an eye on that, just kind of eating and just mumbling about how he hates crowds.
So Laurent is doing what he always does. He's cleaning his gear, in this case his shoes, with a packet of brushes and picks and files that he brings with him that might double as lock picks in a pinch, but he primarily uses them for cleaning out the nooks and crannies of his gear. He says, "Thank you, Lolo. You did not have to bring that up, though I must say, I do not know if I would trust the bacon in a tannery. It is probably shoe leather by now." The other thing you would know from traveling with Laurent is that not much escapes his notice. He is extremely observant, and even when he appears to be not paying attention, he generally notices most of what's going on around him. Mechanically, he has the observant.
Fair. Useful.
Passive perception 22.
Oh, wow.
As you're poking around on this plate, you see the bacon looks very serviceable. and the potato looks perfectly fine. But on your plate in particular, you have the last heel of this bread pushed on there, and the bread seems to be a little off, like it's starting to mold on one corner. But it doesn't seem to be like a pervasive thing or anything. It just kind of catches you off that they spent all this time making sure the bacon looked good and the potato looked good, but slightly moldy bread. Just strikes you as your observant person. Easily pick it off and do whatever, but...
So that is curious. Did the kitchen look hygienic to you, Lolo? Anything strange downstairs?
It smells like burnt flesh down there, and I am not concerned about his hygiene, but our cook slash bartender service person is quite readable in a literal sense. There's a lot of arcane symbols on his skin. That's strange, and I do not necessarily understand all of you people that well, but he seems off. Like, really off. And he doesn't seem to sense all that much. Quite in opposition to Yulo. He doesn't even notice when there is some flies on him, and I don't know. I would have thought he would be some kind of zombie minion, but he doesn't smell like it. But I would be surprised if he has his faculties still together.
Yes, I have heard of writing being used, kind of natural tether, I guess, but I was never privy to that part. In any case,
On the other hand, maybe that is how these taverns are run in this town? Hovel? Place?
From the second floor, there are only 2 floors of this building, you can look out and see that there are maybe 15 houses. Some of them that work as shops. You see someone hammering away down there at a small forge. But it doesn't seem to be a very large place. You also can see that there are people now breaking away after they have spoken to this figure standing atop the well, who begin to work. Especially here, outside, they're sawing logs and splitting lumber. So the constant sound of lumber being sawed and hacked is pervasive now as the day is moving on.
So Cruz is just going to offer some offhanded comments regarding the things that have been mentioned so far. First off, it's kind of a small town for weird bartenders with words on them, and people gathering in the morning with on top of wells and stuff like that, burning flesh. This is a small town. It sounds like a cult to me, and it's just gonna be worse. It's gonna be a cult, I know it.
Bruce, I am sure there's nothing to worry about. These commoners, they have all kinds of strange beliefs, and Laurent will go to the window and look out among the people, and one of the skills that he's picked up at court is the ability to read lips from afar, so he's going to look around and see if anybody is speaking or saying anything that would be out of the ordinary.
Now that you've taken the time to kind of survey out, this building is built on the edge of a clearing. It seems like when they started logging, they were cutting trees out and growing the settlement naturally that way. In the very center is where the well is, and you see the strewn-over foundation where an old building used to be. Maybe it burned down, maybe it was torn down and repurposed, but the town has grown outward in the shape of a donut, almost. There are no trees in here, so the sun beams down, but it's very, very temperate and fairly high up in this mountainous region. You look out and spot these people at work, covered in writing. The man hammering a horseshoe, covered in writing, across his knuckles, burned. You see him reach into the forge and pluck out a piece of hot red iron with his hand, and the smoke curling up as it burns the flesh on his palm. Tink, tink, tink. He hammers at it as though it's no problem. The person on the well is the only one in town that you can see from this high vantage point speaking. And when he speaks, he says something along the lines of, "Oh, children, this is the way of things. It is part of Mezzos. It is part of all things." And then that person walks away. He takes the hand of the next person. "We know the truth, and we shall know so much more." That person goes to work. They all kind of file in like ducklings, almost, speak to him, touch his hands, turn, and then walk out into their various tasks. You can also hear, due to your high perception, downstairs people are coming in to eat breakfast. You can hear the telltale sounds of clink, clink, stuff being put out on tables, and people slowly chatting about things like the weather. "At least the rain ended. Yeah, good for my crops at least. My daughter's still sick. Mezzos guide her." This kind of placid, flat language that they're using probably upsets a courtier of your stature. The idea that they have almost no signatures of emotion. You see one individual in town who seems to be tending to sheep that are inside of a small little pen, and he opens the pen, but there's a latch, one of those chain latches that you have to unhook, and when he swings it open and the latch pulls tight, he tilts his head and looks at it mercurially, and he puts his hand on it for a moment, and he looks around a little confused. He tugs a few times at it. It won't move. So he goes over and gets an axe, pries it from the top of a log, comes over and hacks apart the fence until he can swing open the fence and let the sheep out for the day. The dog goes after the sheep, spreading them out into this forest. He then comes over very quickly, this few minutes you're watching as you're finishing off the last few bites of your breakfast, comes over, gets lumber, goes back, and starts fixing the fence.
On second such cruise, perhaps it is a bit too early to dismiss any theory about cults and such. Does anybody know Mezzos?
Does that ring any bells from any books that I may have read in my past?
Roll me an Arcana check, please.
Alrighty. That is a natural 20, but only a 22.
A 22 tells you that Mezzos could be derived from many different words, an interpretation of different words. But one thing that's ubiquitous about that sort of thing and what you're being told as you're peering out slowly from the window, kind of cowardly surveying what your friends are pointing out to you, there are creatures in this realm, not of this realm, from far beyond it. You know from your readings and conversations of things called the Far Realm, where various parasites and odd happenings go on. And this has the ring of some echo of that kind of reality. Not quite human, not humane or mundane, not quite material. That sticks in your mind above all other things. Readings of people who have been driven mad over the centuries. Jarin du Cabal said that he once saw such things in nightmares, living in day. When he saw it in his waking eye, he took his own life and left his manuscripts. That's the sort of writings that you recall the most in this moment.
So Cruz is going to relay that information, but he's going to relay it as if it were a scary story that he once heard and read. When, of course, the reality is that he's decided that it's merely a scary story because scary stories can't hurt you.
They're not real.
But that is the background that he's offering up to it. What you do with the rest of the information is up to you, and whether you decide he's being truthful or accurate as to it just being a story. That's up to you.
Laurent, can you please roll me a perception check?
And
This will be
I
active.
rolled a 3, so that's a 10.
A 10, you see little more than these people milling about in the place. If you had to guess from this vantage point, you would say maybe 30 people, 35, something like that, lived here, not including children. It doesn't seem to be a very large place. There are no carts coming in, no commerce or anything. It's all the people that live in the surround right here.
Laurent is his examination is a little bit put off by the scary story that Cruz is telling.
At least it wasn't told in the dark.
Yeah, that's when Cruz is telling me under the bed.
Relay that information back to the rest of the party and say, well, this is an unsettling development, but the only one who seems to communicate in normal sense is this man in the middle. Perhaps he's our best lead for finding Udom.
I wonder if he is Gish. Gish?
Gish or Gishish.
Gishish.
Which I do not know this.
Going to have to explain what that means.
There was someone is writing on these people, and our bartender with the deep voice and the strange name said that Gish wrote on him. So maybe he wrote on all of these people, or she, or they.
I mean, this town is small enough, insular enough. I wouldn't be surprised.
It is strange. And I don't know, I don't like it.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should just leave and put this out of our past as quickly as possible, and find somewhere that doesn't have people with writing on them and cults.
Tap, 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 tap. Someone taps at your door.
Cruz is going to try to move the dresser that's nearest to him and like hide behind that, kind of ineffectively.
It's
makes
not
a
very
lot of
heavy.
noise.
Yeah. It's made of saw lumber. Harboring brought water from the door.
Don't drink it, it's full of cult stuff.
Leluca is and opens the door. Come in.
See this giant bear of a man step in, and he has 2 pitchers of water, and tucked under his arm he has a basin, and he gestures for you to take the basin. In case you need to clean. He puts the 2 pitchers down on the small table.
Why don't you stay for a moment and tell me more about this writing? We are all so fascinated.
Not all of us.
He kind of walks around and collects empty plates, if there are any, and stacks them up. And as he does so, he will absent-mindedly just say, "They're the writing of Mezzos.
Oh.
Given by Jish. It is truth."
Well, if it is written, then it must be truth. And just before this lumbering hug takes away his plate, Lulu will take the bacon just in case and save it for later.
He takes the final plate and kind of puts it on top and holds it between his 2 ham hock mitts. And he says, "You 4 should go and see Jish. He can show you the truth of things."
And where do we find this Jish?
He takes a step, Cruz, directly towards you, and then another, the plates in front of him. And when he bumps up against the dresser that's pushed near the window, he looks down at it, confused, for a moment. And he takes a step back and looks at it again like, what the hell is this thing? And then he shuffles past it without looking directly at you, Cruz, and out of the window, and gestures with the plates. "Jish is there, above the well."
Cruz is going to just kind of move as far away from this person as he can in the room, and then go, "Good, we know where Jish is, so we cannot go there, and then we can just all live happily ever after."
There's a rattling sound, and you see that Harbin is shaking, and the plates are rattling together. It's just for a moment, maybe 2 seconds, and then it stops. And he says, "Lunch at midday. If you need anything, just ask." His long, kind of auburn-colored ponytail down to his mid-back as he steps out of the room and gently closes the door behind him.
I like him, says Lulu into the room.
Bacon between your fingers.
Pretty much. Slowly rolling it up.
Saving it for later.
Cruz is just like pushing the hair back and like beads of sweat, and he's just like, he was definitely gonna explode for a second there. I know it.
They do not like things that are out of order. They do not deal well with the unexpected, no? It is like the man with the gate, the dresser.
It's almost like they can't handle situations they aren't expecting. Almost like they don't have their minds of their own.
They are in a fog.
You all, without even having to roll a check, would, now that it's been pointed out, you can look through the window and see them. It is true, they all seem to be dulled in some way as they go about their daily lives. The rows of plants are not quite right. They're tilted and overlapping slightly. The shingles are not being hung perfectly straight, but people often take little stops in their day to look at things as though they're peculiar, even though they're very mundane.
All the people that we've seen so far, have they been, for the most part, human?
It would be hard to tell from the second floor this far away. But they all look humanoid. They don't look very large like Goliaths or lizard folk or anything. But it would be hard to say.
Okay. But nobody who looks quite like Asenath herself.
No. You don't see any of the rare races out and about here in town.
Okay.
The pitcher of water that was brought to us, I assume it's like a metal pitcher.
Mm-hmm. Seems to be made of tin.
Yeah, Cruz is going to pick that up and produce a little flame below it to start boiling that.
Boiling up the cold stuff.
Yeah, and he's going to say, "Look, since you're not taking it as seriously as me, maybe we can go around and ask people what's going on, and you'll get just as scared. And then when you're scared like me, we can leave." He's boiling the water.
That is an excellent idea. Just give me a second. And Lulu will dig out his spell book and just flip through it. And then start to cast... Sorry.
Bless you.
Um,
You have to say that or the demons get in.
Cast Detect Magic.
Okay.
Just moving slowly in sort of a slow dance around the room.
You described Lulu last time as being something of a hedge wizard.
Yeah.
So this might be the first time that Matthew and Ryan would know. Lulu often produces things like dried newts or different types of vegetation that have been arrayed in a certain capacity during these rituals. But it would be very mesmerizing to see this limber and lithe kind of lizard folk move around in this suspicious but delicate and thought-provoking way. Very measured, despite the fact that it looks so barbaric, some might say. But you can tell instantly that this person is a very, very intelligent spellcaster.
As he arranges the things that he needs for his ritual, little stones and dried flowers and some roots, and starts to move them around like changing patterns on the ground, he slowly gets into the spirit and conjures up the magic for detect magic.
Once the ritual is complete and you have the capacity, you have detect magic out to a range of 30 feet, correct?
Yes.
30 feet. The floor here is not overly thick either. You can see small echoes, little fuzzy nodules of magic all beneath you. And you would imagine that it's probably the patrons inside this place. You also look around at your fellows, and I imagine that there's some lingering magic there as well. But to get the most use out of it beyond that, you may have to descend the stairs and out into the town.
Absolutely. I just figured it's easiest to do this in the room first.
Mm-hmm.
So not to draw too much attention.
Absolutely.
I'll immediately look down and say, oh, this is fascinating. It is so fascinating.
What are you seeing?
I feel some arcane resonance down there.
Abjuration magic, you would feel.
Yes. That is my... it is abjuration magic?
It is abjuration magic, yes.
Oh, perfect. That is my speciality. Now I'm exactly really curious, actually. We should go investigate.
Yes, you first. Here. And Cruz will hand the pitcher to Laurent. Try this. Let's see if it's safe now.
See if it's cold stuff.
You look into the heated pitcher and you look into the cold pitcher, and they both seem fine to you. One is very hot and the other is not.
I am not here to taste your water, Cruz, but if what Lolo is saying is true, I may soon be joining you under the bed. It is very unsettling here. Perhaps some investigation will shed light on it, though. Light is shed on things, they tend to become less frightening.
Cruz is just like, yes, you should be frightened. Mm-hmm.
I feel like we should not go to Jish first. If they are the one who's been doing all this, I feel like they will be cautious of the secrets, especially from outsiders. I mean, we don't exactly all look like we fit in here. I've yet to see anyone who looks quite like myself.
So Laurent has been putting on pulling up his long boots and putting his linen shirt on under his armor during the time that Lola was casting the ritual, and he is now looking at himself in a pocket mirror that he carries. He nods. I am ready to go outside.
The four of you can descend the stairs. You can either bring your hot water or not, completely up to you. But as you come down the staircase and look out into this tannery kitchen thing, this all-in-one catch-all location, you see there are probably 10 people down here, and they're eating food that seems fairly off. You notice that they all have heels of this moldy, kind of moist bread, and they're eating half-cooked bacon that hasn't quite been prepared up to the measure that it was given to you. Potatoes that are still absolutely half raw, but they're chewing through it anyway. And when the four of you come down the stairs, they all look in your direction, and some of them murmur to themselves. Laura, you would know with your perception, they're whispering the word uninitiated. They're uninitiated. They should speak to Chish. They shouldn't be here. Not like those other four. That kind of thing.
So Laurent will whisper to the others, apparently we are not first visitors. And another four. Perhaps Udon was among them.
Oh, that is possible.
Do we know if Udon traveling with any group? Have we heard anything about that?
Nope. Last you heard from Udom, he was traveling here to Gold Falls. He did not tell that to everyone, but through the missives that you all might have shared on the road on your way here, he was coming here to investigate nightmares that had been plaguing the people here. He thought that it would make great entry into his book and his ballad of poems. He came working for another faction that has sway in this region called the Lord's Alliance. Though he was never supposed to tell you of such a thing, he is a bit of a loudmouth and a bit of a braggart. So when he had the time to in his missives to you, he would drop subtle and not so subtle hints, going so far as to send Cruz, I believe, a sigil of the Lord's Alliance that was taken from a piece of armor from someone apparently he saved in a mine. When you step out, because no one here really engages with you unless you specifically try to engage with them, when you step out of this singular too-tall building, you see that the whole rest of the town is very quaint at the outset. But everyone who walks by, including the children who are gathering up little sticks and rocks to play with and splashing in mud, they are covered in this arcane writing.
Is the magic resonance that I'm feeling, is it coming from that writing, or
It is
can
coming.
I even distinguish?
It would be hard to distinguish, but since it is your speciality, yes. It is coming from this writing very faintly, far more faintly than any active spell you've ever cast. It's very, very faint. But when you exit this place through the open doorway and come within 30 feet of this town crier, who you believe to be Jish, he lights up with magic. Abjuration and conjuration magic. Almost like a beacon compared to everyone else. You would also see, as you walk by the people sawing logs, Lulu, there is a small house nestled into the trees about 25 feet away from you. The front door is closed and the window is boarded up. But inside, through the thin door, you can see the faint magical presence of an item. Items always give off that little bit strange magic, that lingering enchantment so peculiar to see with detect magic. You detect it very strongly from inside that house beneath something. It's tucked in there somewhere, maybe hidden.
Friends, I would like to warn you, this Jish, he is very conjurational and abjurational. He is very strange and he is very, very magical. You should be careful. And also, do not look so obviously. Pretend to look around. Do you see this little hut over there? There's some strong magic hidden there, or some magic at least. It might be hidden and could hold information.
Good, we should definitely avoid both of them as much as possible.
Laurent, of course, is very practiced at looking without appearing to look, so... but he will, without so much as looking in Lolo's direction, he says, Lolo, you mentioned abjuration magic. Could
Yes.
it be that this is to keep out something that is influencing their dreams? Udon mentioned nightmares. Perhaps they have turned to this man to protect him from that, but he has shut out more than they bargained for, huh?
It is possible, I suppose. But he's also conjuring something, so...
Perhaps he is both the source of the nightmares and the end of the...
It is not unreasonable to suspect such a thing.
If you wish
But,
to go without actually ruling. How's that would work?
Asanth. Can you pronounce your name again, Ryan? Asaneth?
Asanath.
Ansanoth. Okay.
Yeah.
I got it right the first time, but then
I...
But now that you are out here, and you see these people sawing lumber and moving around cattle and sheep and that sort of thing, and the children bustling about, the vast majority of this town seems to be comprised of half-elves. Half-elves, human, and half-orcs.
No. No full on either side of that spectrum. From what I
None
can
that
tell.
you see, no.
Okay.
What happened to the other halves? They're missing their other halves. What did they do to them?
Maybe they left before all of this.
The upper half or the lower half that's of an orc?
It is about this time that the congregation that has been speaking with Jish have all filtered through, spoken to him, and left. And so he steps down from the well very carefully onto a box, onto the ground, and begins to walk north through town. As he does so, he stops periodically and nods to people, or waves, or touches their hand. That sort of thing. Very slowly, not like he's going anywhere in particular.
Does he seem to be moving in that kind of stilted fashion that the rest of them seem to be?
He seems to be moving like a politician,
Okay.
gliding through the steps and looking around, surveying this place. Takes a deep breath. You see, he pulls this hood back. It's not sinisterly pulled over his face, but covering him from the sun, his bald head covered in writing. He seems to take a deep breath. He looks to be half-elf himself. You spot he has a scar over a part of his mouth and nose, down to his cheek. And one of his teeth is missing. He kind of lets out a big and then continues to walk.
You mentioned seeing an item logo.
Yes. Is this hut in the same direction that he's walking, or is it?
It is eastward, just 20 or so feet away from you.
Well, if he's not watching, maybe we should go have a look there.
In fact, no one seems to be watching you. Even the people next to you.
Mm-hmm.
Children splashing in mud pay you no mind.
Well, I somehow already written those off, so I was mostly concerned about this. Maybe we should inconspicuously move over there and see what it is.
I mean, board it up.
And
Thank you.
quickly, before my spell fades.
Think
Okay.
that if someone lives there, they may not be under the influence of whatever this is. They may have a different story to tell. If they'll let us in.
We can just knock.
You said that the door was boarded up
The window is boarded up from the inside. Mm-hmm.
from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Can
One of the shutters is kind of tilted off and blows in the breeze. There was never any glass, it doesn't seem, but now there's boards in the window.
Inspecting it closely, can I notice any shadows passing between the cracks that would indicate somebody's inside, or hear any?
You see light spilling from the cracks, as though maybe a lantern or several candles are lit inside.
It is not abandoned, I do not think.
Then,
So whoever is in there has taken pains to not be disturbed, perhaps.
Who's out there?
No one?
You hear from the cracks in the window, and you see that the light kind of snuffs out as someone's face comes up to the cracks in the boards.
Those we weren't exactly being subtle.
You aren't.
Well,
Who's there?
I suppose you could say we're new in town.
well, I am Lulu. Who are you?
Philby,
Philby.
are you initiates?
I do not believe so. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Give me a moment. You hear a chain, and then the door opens. You see that there's maybe a 5'5" old man, gray, long kind of gray hair pulled back. He has a headband so it doesn't get into his eyes. Scraggly, kind of rough beard, not very long. He has one white cataract eye, and the other is very clear, ice blue, and he kind of surveys all of you. Come in. Quick.
Okay.
You see the whole room's illuminated in lamps and candles.
So
Yeah,
Laurent pats
freaks.
Cruz on the shoulder and says, "Do not worry. I'm sure he's quite on the level. It will be fine, huh?"
I'm sure
That's
you're
kind of
sure
cool.
about that, but I am going to worry.
From what we can see of this man, he does not appear to have any of these tattoos.
He does not, no. Though he looks like a very worn leather boot. His skin is very, very tan, weathered. He looks to be maybe in his 60s or 70s, but God, it looks like he's had a very rough life.
Put a
Hard
lot
set.
of time out. So.
When you step inside and your eyes begin to adjust, a hand kind of touches the first person that comes inside on the chest and stops them. And
It's probably Lolo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair, yeah.
He touches Lulu on the chest and he says, "Don't be frightened. Just don't let those freaks in here." And then
I'm
he
not
steps out
frightened.
of the way.
Well, I'll go
Lulu,
inside.
You're the first person to see that past this man with hunched shoulders and white gray hair covered in wounds, hanging on the wall from a nail, you see is a ring of scalps and a pouch made out of scalp, holding something heavy. It's kind of
Like
hanging down to the bottom.
like humanoid scalps, obviously.
Yes,
Clearly.
humanoid scalps. There's a simple fur bed in the corner next to what looks to be an iron wood burning stove. The stove is currently lit. It's very warm in here, but he seems fairly thin at this point, so you imagine he probably needs a lot of heat. It smells like blood in this room, but there is none on the walls, none on the floor, other than that dripping from the nose of a rabbit hanging overhead on a spoke of a wheel that's hung to the ceiling, along with a bunch of herbs and other vegetables that are drying. And when you come inside, he slowly and deliberately closes the door, latches it, and runs a chain through the loop, and puts the chain in a peg on the wall. "You can't be too careful," he says.
No. Definitely not around these parts.
Cruz will place the pitcher down somewhere and back off.
He's
Be like, "We don't want trouble. We brought you some possibly cultured water. I think it's fine. Just don't hurt us."
He reaches out, and when he grabs the pitcher, is the first time you realize he has massive hands. They're huge. Like, they dwarf what you were holding on this pitcher, and you realize that not hunched or withered with low shoulders, he was probably a very huge individual. But now he's been withered with age. He looks into it and says, "All right. I guess I can offer maybe tea." He goes over and gets a clay little pot and puts some pine needles and evergreen needles in it. "What the hell are you doing here?"
We're looking for a friend. About Yi Hai, have you seen him?
"Hudam.
Exactly.
Yeah, I saw him."
Indeed.
Certainly leave an impression, doesn't he?
Who here is trained in history? Who here is?
boy.
If you are, you can roll me an intelligence history or a charisma history check. Your choice.
I would prefer charisma. That gives
Going
me
for-
a better bonus.
Intelligence, which will be a 22 total.
17 for
That is a 16 for Austin.
Lulu is kind of looking on the wall at this ring of scalps and this pouch hanging there, and you can see kind of poking out of the top what looks to be a very old humanoid tooth crammed into this pouch that's hanging. There must be 80 or 90 in there. The other three of you watching this old man pour this hot, seeping water over these needles, the name Philby sticks with you. Philby. There was a gladiator named Philby. Philby, son of Smine. He was called the Bloodied He made his name in the city of Kalamshan, some Uthgardt barbarian brought there to fight in the arenas, and apparently he fought for so long that he won his freedom and his fame. And it's this look that he gives you when you say that you know Udam, and he looks up. This look that kind of chills your bones just for a moment before you remember he's an old man. That's when it dawns on you. This might be the Bloodied.
So Cruz is going to be just sort of picking at his cuticles nervously and is not like looking at anyone. He just like looks up at Philby and then like goes back to that, and then it's like, do you happen to know about and then he kind of goes through it like a Wikipedia article, and he just keeps kind of going, just trying to do anything to distract himself from the situation he's currently in.
Stress vomiting information.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a wooden spoon and is very slowly swirling these needles, these freshly collected needles. It's very aromatic despite this coppery smell of blood that's all inside of here. And he says, it wasn't true. I didn't kill 100 men. It was just a bit more than 80, he says. And he begins to pour the tea. He says, I don't have many glasses. And dumps out the rest of the water onto the floor and pours tea into the pitcher so that you each can get a cup. He says, Udam was here a few days ago. I tried to warn him. Tried to get him away from here. He said he was going to speak to the others that haven't been taken in by Jish. I knew him back when he was just Splinter Tooth. I don't know what's going on, but I haven't had to kill any of them yet. I'm trying to keep from doing it. He grips his hands and looks at the calluses and the weathered knuckles. I came here to stop killing. It followed me, he says.
He said Splinter Tooth?
He nods when you ask, and he says, he got hit in the mouth by a tree he was felling. Cracked his teeth. Messed up his jaw and his lips. They called him Splinter Tooth. He didn't have a family name.
Glenn Scott.
That's rough, buddy.
So we're already in here. Can Lulu sense that magic aura?
100%. You see it like a burning candle flame beneath this pile of furs on the ground, tucked underneath all this bedding.
And I'm going to try tasting the air if it tastes more than one person, unless the blood is overwhelming in here.
The thing is, when you're kind of tasting the air and looking around, you don't think that there is, like, blood from the teeth or the scalps. It's long dried. Probably 10, 15 years since they were taken. This smell, like, permeates from the floor, from this pile of bedding. You probably imagine from whatever's casting this magical aura. And being pretty perceptive himself, Philby will notice you kind of surveying the bedding. And he'll say, Friend, you don't want to mess with that. But if you think you'll need it, I'll give it to you.
What is it?
The Bloody Cross. The three of you who knew Philby's reputation, you know that he apparently, in his trips to Zakara, Kalamshan, he came across what he used to call the Father of Swords. The crowd called it the Bloody Cross in Zakaran. It was a very catchy term. It's probably not something you remember. but it was supposed to be a fairly powerful magical weapon that he wielded in the arena. He says, "I don't know if it'll be helpful. That sword's an evil fucker." And you see, Lulu, this aura move like a jellyfish almost, like the sword heard him beneath the covers. Udam said he would check out the collapse. The place where Jish stumbled onto whatever it was. He said he talked to the others in town, those too strong to be taken in by Jish and his fellows. There are a pair of orcs that live across town. I want to say that maybe Brella is safe. She always kept to herself, halfling, baker. She's no threat to anyone, but she lived in a house that predated this place. They'd have to burn it down to get her out. I think the four of us are all that's left, he says. And he gives this racking, uncomfortable cough and kind of takes in a stuttering breath and sips on his tea.
So Laurent's too polite to refuse the tea, but he just kind of looks at it and swirls it. Says, "Do you know what he has done to these people? When did it begin?"
It's been maybe a month, a 10-day longer possibly. He was out in the forest logging. He didn't come back with the 2 men he left with. That's what I was told in the early days, he says. I think he took them out there one at a time, showed them something. They came back different, bumbling around, idiotic, changed. 1 became 2, became 5, became 12. Didn't take long. The writing came after. Some kind of prayer. They stand out there shaking at night, praying to something, whatever this Mezzos is. He looks around. I've not left, except for at night to get food. I know that Udam came by just like you, peeking his eye in here. He saw the sword. He looks to you, Lulu, just like you. Wanted to ask questions. He remembered who I was. I told him Jish would take him there. He just had to ask. But I told him to leave. He didn't.
Would it be possible to find this place without asking Jish?
Good.
He almost like someone who's battling with paranoia. He kind of looks around and up, and he says, I don't know, but what I hear in the trees, there's something out there. I don't know what, but there's something out there. Jish walks these woods every day. The people he takes, they're not hurt. They just come back changed. He walks over and, with his gnarled fingertips and his thick fingernails, kind of pries up one of the boards on the ground. And beneath it, he pulls out a pack, a small pack, a leather-bound bag. He opens it up, and rattling around inside are 3 vials of red liquid and what looks to be a length of wood about 3 feet long, covered in a leather cap. And he says, I offered these to Udam, and he said he didn't need them, Maybe you might. I know I don't. 3 potions of healing and a torch, ever burning. I got them prizes from an age ago. He says, Udam was kind to me. More kind than most. If you find him, I hope he's safe.
We hope so too.
Indeed.
And these sound very, very useful.
Yes, I think it would be in our best interest to take them. If we are going to get further. No.
As he's kneeling on the ground right next to this bed of furs, his hand rests atop them, like he's touching the back of a lover who's asleep. And he says, My bloody business is done, but it's never forgotten. Death is a close friend of mine, like a brother. And it's best that we keep our distance. And he pulls his hand away and closes it. I'm sorry I can't do more.
You have been very kind to us. Is there anything that we might do for you?
He shakes his head. I don't want to see these people die. I think if you're going in those woods, you may want to go speak to the hunters. The orcs that live across the street, across town that way. He points as though he's gesturing out of the window. Ortar and Graz. They seem strong. I think they'll lead you there.
So Cruz is like nodding, yes, and he's counting. Okay, so don't go in the woods. Definitely don't go in the woods. There's something bad there. We definitely should stay away from Jish. He's got the writing on him, but he's different. So there's obviously something different about the writing on him. So we should avoid him. We should definitely avoid the hunters, and make sure that we don't follow their directions to go into the woods. And I guess we should definitely speak to the baker, because she might have something that doesn't have mold on it.
Do you say that out loud?
Oh, yeah.
So Philby kind of nods and he says, If you want to talk to Brella, she lives by the orcs. They were friends at one point.
Oh, no.
Follow the smoke.
So that explains why none of the bread is recently baked. See, Town Baker, she is not among them.
He nods. I've not seen her in a time.
Could she be in trouble?
He kind of squints his eyes and looks out in the middle distance, and he says, Maybe. If Udam went there, maybe. Otherwise, she's too skittish. He points a finger at Cruz, like this one, afraid of everything. She'd run, not fight.
We need the case. Speak to her.
Have we seen the bloody cross yet? What kind of weapon is it? Or do we know of it?
You rolled high enough on your checks that you would know he wielded a greatsword.
Very large, but not suited for.
That is beyond Lauren's ability to wield as well. Cruz could probably wield it, but
You'll have to convince him to put his hands on it.
Ra gives a skeptical look while he's thinking of this at Cruz, that he would dare to pick up any sword with such a reputation, but...
Lulu was over at the moment it was named the Bloody Cross.
Just, oh no, that's That's scary.
As an out of character note, Cruz is very much a coward. However, he is also very much susceptible to being bullied.
Browbeaten.
Well, I mean,
Cruz, perhaps a powerful weapon would offer you some protection against the many things that plague your thoughts.
Yeah, it would.
Maybe
As long as it's not a big evil sword or named after something bloody or vampiric or dark.
To the sound of he throws back the covers, this big thick pile of covers he's been sleeping on. And you see this greatsword. Cruz, there's a moment where the camera lingers on your face and then cuts to the sword and pans down its entire length. It has a hilt of amber, this pommel of solid amber, with what seems to be a single drop of blood trapped inside. Past the oak haft and this heavy iron cross, the cross guard, you see that the blood looks like a rusted, just begrimed and abused length of solid metal that flakes away and drips in a pool of blood that leaks through the floor underneath the house. And when it is uncovered, it's as though the blood tries to reach out and grab you, and then drips away.
Yeah, so like Cruz is flailing, like, and like that's exactly the thing we don't want.
it has a certain artistry to it.
Seems to like you.
Yeah, bad things always do. I don't know why.
yes, but this is a bad thing you can use to wield against other bad things.
I'll tell you what. I'll pick it up, but one of you has to pick it up first, so I can see that it's not going to immediately attack me.
Fine. And Asanath will go and grasp the hilt.
You wrap your slender drow fingers around the hilt. And can you make me a charisma check, please?
Oh.
And you would have disadvantage.
Oh, fair.
So Laurent rolls his eyes at Cruz a little bit, but he's clearly
10.
relieved that Asenath took the plunge and was the one to pick up the sword.
Seeping into your drow brain. It is not an enchantment, it is not a compulsion, but it is this drive. More blood, more death, more carnage is what you feel. You want to plunge this deep into Philby's chest. Kill him. Kill them all. And then you let go of the sword.
You seem perfectly safe.
When I let go of the sword, does the whispering
Immediately, yeah. Immediately.
Oh, you two will be perfect.
Let's see.
Well, they do say opposites attract.
Cruz will go.
Philby is looking at you, his eyes narrowed in sorrow.
Cruz will
It'll
go
change
over
you, boy.
with like shaking hands and like go to pick it up and then like come back a little bit and then like take the blanket and then like wrap the blanket around the sword and then like pick it up like a package.
The blood that it was leaking through the floor is not real, it seems. There's no stain, there's no nothing like that. When you wrap it in this blanket and lift it, it just remains quiet. It's very, very heavy. Like 40 pounds it feels. Far, far heavier than it should be. And it weighs you down like you're carrying a sack of grain.
Yeah. Despite his wimpiness and noted scholarly past, he is actually reasonably capable of at least carrying things like this without over-encumbering himself. For all of his faults, at least Cruz can haul.
Yeah. He's at least got some meat on his bones.
Yeah.
Where do you go now? Are you going to try and find the orcs or the baker?
Well, the baker seemed more like Cruz's speed. And since we forced him to pick up a potentially, or a rather evil sword.
Yeah.
Let's balance out the bad with the good here.
When you
But
cross the
right back this
town, people are still bustling and busy. No one pays you any mind. It would be idyllic. Go ahead, Lulu.
One second. Before we leave, Lulu will look through his bag of all kinds of balms and ointments to find something for Philby's cough, and I'm assuming he has some sort of salves or so that he would give around.
Oh, yeah, you do for sure. When you look at Philby, he seems to be the type of person to rub some dirt in it and ignore it until it either falls off or heals.
Yeah.
So whatever you give him, he seems appreciative of, and he nods.
Rub a little on your chest before you go to sleep. That cough will come off quite quickly.
As you linger, Lulu, and Cruz steps out along with the other two companions, it's like his shoulders lift a little, the burden of this blood-drenched sword removed like a physical weight from him. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Giving him a toothy smile and then follow my companions.
You can keep the picture.
It wasn't ours. You can keep it.
There's a scene where he closes the door, runs the chain through the loop, puts it on the peg, and then looks at the picture and nods.
Fuck these guys.
When you cross town, no one seems to pay you any mind. And halfway, you begin to be led by your noses. You smell the telltale smell of pie. Yeast. It smells amazing. And when you close the distance, you see that there is a cottage made of full logs. It is not ramshackle. It seems to be made to withstand a hurricane or an earthquake. This small but very sturdy cottage. And boiling out of the chimney is a constant stream of smoke and steam. The windows are boarded up. Same as with Philby.
Be right back.
This would be almost pleasant if it's in different circumstances. But again, she seems to have cut herself off from the outside. Be a wise move. Again, are there signs of life inside the house? Like, obviously, there's smoke.
Mm-hmm. You see the glow of light on the other side and the smell of baking pies.
Knock on the
Are you
door,
muted,
see
Ryan?
if there's any.
Okay. You knock. Tap, tap, tap. You hear a gasp on the other side. A rattle, rattle. And then you hear a... Who is it?
We're new in town. We couldn't help but smell the wonderful smells, for lack of a better word, of your your baked goods. Would you mind if we came in?
Say a prayer to Timora.
Just. I'm afraid that's a new one. Looking back at the other three.
Timora is good. Timora is great. Let us in before it's late.
The door opens, and you see the glistening point of a crossbow bolt kind of in the little crevice made by the door at knee height for you, Cruz, pointed up. And behind it is a little halfling woman with a head of braided chestnut hair and wide mouth painted purple with some berry lipstick.
Cruz is going to immediately try to get behind the nearest person.
Show me your hands. Show me your arms. No writing?
Yeah, just pull up her sleeves. The only marking she has is like a spider web on one of her forearms.
Come in quick. The door opens.
Yep, just head in.
Move inside.
When you rush inside,
as best we can.
and the door is closed, there's a lever that onto a big bracket. This door would have to be cut open with an axe to get through it, you think. Inside, every horizontal surface is covered in baked goods. They're piled up all over the place. Some of them are sitting on like low counters. Others are sitting on part of a bed. There's some on bookshelves. There's one on the chandelier, this oak kind of carved chandelier overhead, like in the middle where a candle should be balanced perfectly. It's okay. She flings herself at someone. I'm imagining it would be Ezenath, just kind of grab your legs.
Just looking at the other three like, help.
So,
I didn't think that I would see anybody that didn't have that crazy writing on them, she says.
That's fair.
so
What are you all doing here? Why are you here? What do you need?
we
Why
are
do you smell
looking.
like blood?
Why do you smell like blood? As Cruz is still holding it to its chin.
Yeah, he's like holding it like a giant teddy bear.
But trying not to hold it too close.
Yeah, it's like holding it like to be secure, but also so it can't like get up to anything on
So
its
it
own.
can't touch you.
Yeah.
We have come looking for a friend of ours named Udam, a gnome.
He came by as well just a few days ago. He was the first visitor I had since they ran Father Damien out of this place. She cries.
Priest, so.
It is good that you have been keeping busy. I see.
I beg when I'm nervous, she says. You can help yourself, she says.
Cruz is gonna like lean towards the counter and try to like bite into stuff because he can't use his hands.
There's plenty to bite into. Loaves of bread, pastries, stuff like that.
Just sampling.
You also can hear the telltale buzz and see that there is a beehive inside by a window with a big hole cut out of the corner in the back of this cottage. Bees are making their way in and out. She goes back into the kitchen, dusts her hands off, and reaches into this pouch of flour and flicks some out onto the counter and starts kneading it into this pie crust she's working on. I didn't know what I would do. I've just been sitting in here baking like some kind of coward. Timora guide me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do in all of this.
How long have we went baking?
I don't know. It's been maybe a 10-day. I don't really know what else to do. I can't really hear Timora anymore, and I dare not sleep. I keep having these nightmares.
You have had nightmares as well. We have experienced this since we arrived in your village.
Yes. Arrived last night.
When did this begin for you?
Ben just started leading people out into the forest. They kept coming back changed. I started having the nightmares right around then.
So
We sent some people out there to check on it, but they never came back. No one ever comes back. No one ever comes back unless they're changed. I told Udom not to go. He went anyway. He really liked my pies. She sobs. I'm getting tears in my pie crust.
As they say, all you need is love. But
I need 60 to 70 heavily armed men to come in here and fix this. Unless you
Indeed.
can do it. Unless you can fix this. She says, getting higher
do
and
not
higher
fear.
pitched.
Cruz here is a great Genasi warrior. He will stand up for you and the others. Free you from this curse, I'm sure of it.
I don't
have anything to
volunteer
offer you.
for things.
I don't have anything to offer you except for maybe some food.
Stop crying. You're gonna mess up the water to salt ratio in your pie crust.
I can't even cry right. She says and cries harder.
Cruz is pretty much crying along with her at this point.
Yeah.
We spoke to Monsieur Philby. He mentions that your family has been in this area for a great long time. Is that true? Your grandfather?
Not my
before you?
family, just me. I've been here about 30 years.
And in that time, you have not seen anything that would, or heard of anything that's
No.
like what is going on here now?
No, this is She blubbers for a second and then catches herself. No, this is all insane. This is insanity. Timora did not train me for any of this. Father Damien was here teaching for a while. He was teaching the children, and then they chased him out of town with axes and pitchforks. I thought that they would turn on me and kill me next. If it wasn't for Otar and Graz, they probably would have.
Who is this Father Damien you mentioned?
Father Damien, he was a priest of Timora. He and I would, heal people and make sure that this whole place stayed healthy. They chased him out of town when he tried to go and see this thing for himself. Jish didn't want him there, didn't want me there either.
The two of you would have opposed whatever he's been showing.
I don't know what kind of faith he found. I don't know what he found out there that made him change his faith, but he was never really a practitioner of any kind of religion before that. Need, roll. I'm almost no help at all. All I know is that something happened and they changed. They changed and I tried. I tried in the early days. We tried to help them stop burning themselves and eating food that would make them sick, but it just didn't seem to matter.
Yes, I noticed that they seem to be unaware of this around.
She's mentioned Timora several times. Is there any evidence of anything like a shrine or anything like that around here?
Oh, you see that she has a holy symbol to Timora around her neck.
No, holy symbol of 7.
So Jish, he feared this Father Damien would discover what he has discovered, and he chased him out of town rather than have him go.
Jish didn't do anything. It was the people that follow him, though. They all just had it in their mind. They hated hearing his prayers. He didn't pray to this thing, whatever it was. I can't even remember the name. I've been baking too long. It's the flower fumes.
And it might be best to remember.
Have you watched these others for a long time? Have you noticed anything curious about them? When we were staying at the tannery, we noticed that there was a shaking tremor.
They do that sometimes during their prayers. It just happens randomly. They're getting worse and worse, though. I don't know how much longer it'll be until they have a fit. In the early days, they would just sometimes forget where they lived, and we would have to take them home. And then there were more and more and more, and then they stopped knowing how to open doors, and they stopped caring for their animals. They forgot to eat. They started shaking. They were all praying. Then they started tattooing themselves. It's been insane.
And Cruz is going to be like, that's really scary. The fact that they didn't want the priests there probably means that they're like something like undead or something like that. That's really scary.
This one, I'm not sure if it's even undead. Undead doesn't exhibit control over people.
But like, it's not like they have minds here or anything. They just kind of move around and eat moldy bread. And they don't even like... They don't behave like normal people.
Has Laurent noticed anything that looked like any kind of holy symbol of any god in anywhere in town?
No. Nowhere else in town, no. You also haven't been in anyone's house other than Philby, who was a mass murderer, and the tannery, so. But in here, you see she's wearing a holy symbol of Timora, and there are a couple of rooms in this cabin that you can't see into from out here. I know that Udam asked if he could talk to the orcs, and I gave him pies so that he could talk to Ortar and Graz. Maybe they took him somewhere, maybe they led him somewhere, I don't know. I haven't seen him or them since. They live right over here. And she points out the small hole where the bees are crawling in and out behind her house, deeper into the woods. And you can kind of make out what looks to be a shack wall built in the front of some kind of cave nearby. I haven't seen them. That doesn't mean they're not out there. They're very, very good in these woods. If something happened to them, I'm next. I don't know.
So Laurent looks among the assorted pies and baked goods and says, do they have any favorites that we could bring to them?
Oh, they eat whatever, but it'll just show them you talk to me. They trust me, at least.
Suppose it'd be good to bring some kind of gift of goodwill.
Here. She gives you each 5 to 12 pies.
Oh, God.
However many you want.
However many.
Hand pies, full pies, meat pies, sweet pies. She has plenty.
Meat pies.
Cruz just has one in his mouth. Probably one that Asanath put there to stop him from crying.
It's hard to cry and chew.
If anyone has been paying attention, Lolu feels much more uncomfortable in here than in the blood-smelling hut with the Mars murderer.
It's all smells
Also
like
not
stuff.
big into sweet pies and bees, so he's been staying at the door and just
Fair.
watching quietly.
Fair.
It does have a certain buzz to it.
What are you doing, gang? She seems to have pretty much told you everything she knows. She seems to be even more reclusive than Philby, if that were possible.
Well, if you ask Cruz, then we should definitely go find those half-orc hunters so they can show us the way out of here, and we can leave.
You can't say that, you're fine with.
Well, I'm on board with the first half of the plan. If only to get rid of all these pies again.
Yes, I think that go speak with Otar and Graz.
And then we have to find Udom.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Brella. I am sure Timora will protect you, and if we can do anything to help the others in this village, we will be sure to try and accomplish that. Perhaps in time, things will come back to normal here, yes?
She nods and says, I hope so. I really hope so. These are innocent people. They don't deserve whatever's happening to them.
We will bid you adieu then. We will go and speak to Zizork, Otar, and Grass.
She claps her hands and just a plume
Cloud.
of flower comes out, and she grabs this crossbow and follows you to the door and opens it, points, lowers it, opens it the rest of the way. Okay.
I'm getting out.
Yeah. Lolu is the first out. Gone. I do not like this place.
Perhaps
smelling
this is
sweet
the
and
real
flower.
bloody.
Lulu, you scamper out, and when you do, you hear the telltale sound of a bowstring pull back from above and behind you. When you turn and look, there is an orc standing on the roof of this cottage, pointing an arrow at you. Its heavy, thick eyebrows go up and then flatten, and it lowers the bowstring back down.
And I smile up and say, pie?
It smiles back. Pie is my favorite. Outside of the house, two orcs actually approach you as soon as the door closes. The tall, slender female orc covers her mouth with one finger. Shh. And then points into the woods behind the cottage. The shorter, much shorter, but more heavy-set orc on the roof scuttles over and behind the cottage into the woods as well. If you follow, these two greet each two of you and say that their names are Ortar and Graz of Clan Erder. They say...
Like murder.
Yes, like murder, but with no M. Ortar, actually, when they begin speaking to you, absent-mindedly touches the top of this tall female orc's head in a loving, kind of calming motion. And Ortar does most of the speaking and says, I do love pie, but why in the hell are you here? Are you here to help us deal with this problem?
I believe so. We want to find our friend Udom.
Udom. He finishes your sentence, and he nods. He said there might be people looking for him. We've kept an eye out. Most people find their way to Brella sooner or later.
Okay.
Perhaps
He says...
Sorry.
He just says, like, very directly and to the point, do you want us to take him there? To this place, the collapse?
The collapse. What? Before we go, what is it? What has he found?
Graz kind of says in this tusky, kind of dry voice, she says, there was a landslide. And it uncovered something out there. Something just stumbled onto. We didn't dare get too close. Ortar says, Udom walked in like it was no problem. We didn't. We stayed distant. There are things in the woods. Things from that place. They're in the trees, waiting to ambush people who go by.
So if you take us there, will we have to deal with creatures?
We know ways around. Yes, we know ways around them.
How long does it take to get to this place?
Quarter day's walk.
That is good. We can do it within the daylight.
He looks up. We can get there by midday.
What's this going to have to do? faster we can get there, the faster we can get out, hopefully. With Udon.
Yes, in and out. Does that suit you well, Cruz?
I'd prefer the out, but if we
go
have to.
Ortar and Graz look at each other and laugh. We prefer the air. Come and be quiet, he screams.
I wish I could.
So do they want us to move stealthily, or...?
They just want you to follow and be as quiet as you can. If you would like to use stealth check, you absolutely can.
I will.
Sure.
It's gonna be bad for me.
Who's give it a shot. I've been
50.
rolling
Wow, alright.
tens.
14, surprisingly.
That's a 5.
Okay.
Well, you know, lizard folk have the tail to worry about.
Essentially, how this would have worked mechanically is you would have gotten there much quicker than the long way around if you were very stealthy. So, with Ortar and Graz's help, the two of you take this long, looping path through the forest. Seems overgrown, no trails. You all get snagged by branches and bramble and overgrowth. And it is a bit of a slog, and they seem to be cutting through it as though this is like water for them. No problem at all. But the four of you have kind of a hard time of it. Lulu, this overgrowth is nowhere near as bad as Tangled Trees, the place where Survey Site 801 is, but it is not easy to navigate regardless. Having brought you...
Laurent is much worse suited for this. Your past travel companion.
Brady like sleeped in trees and ate poison ivy and stuff. As they're bringing you, they actually explain where you're going so that you can come back on your own if need be. Halfway there on this journey, they stop you. And it's very, very abrupt because Cruz, a hand claps over your mouth and you are dragged to the ground by Graz in a pile. Just snap! And Ortar holds a hand out in front of the other three of you and covers his mouth and lowers himself down to the bushes. And when you all get still and quiet, you see it in the far distance, creeping through the tree. It's so hard to see in the foliage, but it's there. This shape, it looks something like a cross between a bear and a boar, but completely devoid of fur. Its muzzle is short, but wide and covered in teeth. Its eyes are sunken back into its skull in tiny black dots. It does not look natural at all to you. This thing gibbers and crawls through the trees from limb to limb, and as it does so, it seems spongy and malleable, like it's reaching out further than its short little limbs would be possible as it drags itself from tree to tree, like a cross between an octopus and a spider in the way that it moves. After a long few moments, it disappears into the trees far enough away that Graz and Orta let you go.
Cruz is like immediately dry heaving with stress.
That's why she covered your mouth.
Prevent you from screaming.
At least you said you were a coward out loud to them. Otherwise, I would have made you roll for it.
There.
That's one of the creatures. One of those that wait. I saw one stay still for 2 hours. Unmoving, unblinking, unnatural.
It is hideous thing. I've never seen anything like this.
Nor me.
That's disgusting.
Nor me.
It is.
Come.
I hate it.
I hate it. The rest of the journey that they take to get you there is relatively unimpeded. You see, when you finally get to this place and they're telling you to stay quiet, a hillock, very raised, probably 40, 50 feet, but you see that trees are leaned at an odd angle where a landslide of mud and stone ripped half of the trees on this little mountainside down. Mud is piled up for maybe 100 feet in all directions at the bottom of it, with parts of these trees broken and crushed. Beneath the mud and the stone that has given way, you see a wound in the side of this mountain that glistens kind of an ethereal, deep green, like an emerald covered in smoke, almost. The stone that has given way, limestone from 1,000 years ago, built up over this thing from the waters that were probably once here, just cracked and gave way, but this green stone beneath stands firm. There seems to be a lot of traffic in this area, to and from, but none right now. That's where Udom went. That's where he said he would find his answer.
Did he say what question he was asking? He looked for that answer.
Something about the nightmares. He said he was coming to sort out that, driving people mad. He was something of a hero. Came here to save the town and stop the nightmares.
Thank you for bringing us here, I think. That is where Udom went, and that is where we must go, no?
Yes.
Asking the group.
Well,
Unfortunately.
seems
Lulu. Sorry.
like this is the only place left.
Lulu, your magical sight, it may be most useful as we go down there, and the torch that Philby gave us, I do not see well in the darkness.
Well, I can help with light easily, and I'll just I'll look Laurent over and then put a light on something that, if there's some kind of brooch, jewelry, a button, anything that might.
So Laurent carries a signet. Laurent does have a sort of signet ring that is part of his background that could light up, and that's something he could conveniently cover up if he needed to. So
Yeah, I'll put a light spell on it. Yes, it will take me a few minutes, but I can dig into my book again. There's actually another thing that I would like to do, if all of you are agreeable that we have the time to do so. I would like to put an alarm on this entrance, so if one of these strange people comes back with all their writing, we at least know that they're coming.
yes, perhaps Jish or one of his followers will have pursued us here. I did not see any, but they may also have magical words that reveal our passing.
I think we realized.
The four of you,
I do not
when
Cruz is any rush to go in there, so I think you have time.
when the four of you get close to the entrance and you begin to cast this alarm spell, and the three of you are left to kind of look around and wonder, the three of you can see that this wound in the side of this mountain, the stone that is beneath it, goes about 15 feet, maybe a little bit more, and then it opens into what seems like some kind of damp, cavernous space that's completely black inside. When the three of you, not Lulu yet, when the three of you get close to this entrance and peer through into this darkness, can the three of you please make me a wisdom saving throw?
Uh, 21 for Laurent.
I am assuming that this is not something that would charm or put me to sleep.
It is not a charm, or it would not put you to sleep, no.
22 was a natural 20.
Okay.
That's a 6.
3.
So, Cruz and Aznath, can the two of you please roll me a D100?
Ooh, gladly.
D100s are always good when you fail a save.
Oh, yeah.
Always a good sign.
7.
Got it. No problem.
Remind me again what 3 zeros is.
100.
That would be 100.
It's 100.
100. Alright. Then that.
70 for Astronauts and 100 for crew.
70.
Surely 100 beats winning, right?
I mean, maybe.
So, Asenath, what you see... Actually, we'll wait until Daryl gets back. We are not going much longer, by the way. I do know that it is very late for some of you, and I have to really pee and get something to eat. I had like 5 donuts this morning, and that's it. The sugar is murdering me. I've got to eat something.
Yeah. That burned like instantly too, I bet.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I feel great.
Yeah. When I ran this, of just, oh, this will be quick. Oh.
I'll talk about that at the very end. But, Asenath, you actually see from the darkness comes some kind of tendril, a rubbery tendril tipped in claws. The claws are covered in eyes, the pupils of which are the face of people you have killed in your life. It reaches out to grab at you and disappears. You take a step back, you're falling into a chasm that is opened up behind you. And you stumble, boop, into Lura. There's no chasm. You begin to hallucinate for 8 minutes. Cruz, when you peer into this darkness, there's something about this acrid smell permeating from here. It cuts through the blood smell of what you're holding. And you feel this pressure of infinite time. The idea of the end of space tries to creep into your brain. What made nothingness? And you fall unconscious. You take 1/4 step back, and the blackness comes into your eyes before you even hit the ground. But your 3 companions hear a crack as your skull thumps against a stone right outside of this entrance. You also take 3 points of bludgeoning damage. What this means for you, Isonath, is you have disadvantage on all ability checks for the full 8 minutes.
Okay.
The 2 of you who are unaffected, Lulu brought your attention from the spell as one companion passes out, and the other seems to be fleeing and falling and speaking backwards. They look at you with fear in their eyes, this drow. It should never be there. Drow, the way that they have been raised to see the world in its darkest places. But it's not fear of you, it's fear of not understanding something. Lara, you look down at your unconscious companion and you hear, "I see you," from inside the darkness behind you. When you turn and look into the darkness, for just a moment, it's as though you could see a shape of nothingness inside. And that's unfortunately where we're going to have to end this session exploring the Mezzos fragment. I will be happy to pick this up before the end of next month, whenever we can make time for it, to finish out this adventure with just the 4 of us, since you were here to help me test it out. I think that I will be parsing off a little bit of the opening of this adventure and tightening it up, now that I have run it for the 3rd time with some strangers and not people who I could manipulate to go faster.
There.
But thank you so much for coming and playing it. I'm going to wrap up my recordings, and we can have a short little cool off before we sign off for the night. But thanks for watching and playing and such.
Thank you for running. This was really good.
Yeah,
I really like this.